Welcome to His Stories, the place where real men's truths finally get told. If you're new here, you're in good company. This is where we strip away the masks, cut through the noise, and share the raw, unfiltered experiences that shape us as Black men in America. Today's story comes from a brother who learned that love doesn't always protect you from heartbreak, and sometimes the people closest to you can cut the deepest. Let's dive in. A man's heart plans his way, but the Lord determines his steps. That's Proverbs 16:9, and I've been holding on to those words for the better part of 7 decades. But sometimes, fellas, sometimes you wonder if the Lord was testing your faith or teaching you about the true nature of people. Sometimes you realize that while you were busy being a father and a husband, others were busy being actors in a play you didn't even know you were watching. The day I found out I was just the landlord was a Tuesday. I remember because it was trash day, and I was wheeling the bins back from the curb when I heard his voice through the kitchen window. Devin, the boy I'd raised since he was 3 years old, was on the phone with someone, laughing about something. Then I heard him say it, clear as day. "Nah, man, that's just my mom's landlord. He thinks he's my dad or something." Just a landlord. 19 years of Little League games, school conferences, birthday parties, Christmas mornings, scraped knees, homework help, driving lessons, graduation speeches, and college applications. 19 years of loving a child who wasn't mine by blood, but was mine by choice. 19 years of being called dad to my face while being called the landlord behind my back. I stood there in my own driveway, holding that trash bin handle so tight my knuckles went white, feeling like someone had reached into my chest and pulled out everything that mattered. That's when I knew Valerie had been planning this moment longer than I'd been foolish enough to believe in our family. If you've ever been blindsided by someone you trusted, hit subscribe and drop your city in the comments. Where you watching from? Let's see where our brotherhood stretches, because I got a feeling this story is going to touch more hearts than I ever wanted it to. My name is Tago Robert, and I'm 73 years old now. Been on this earth long enough to see the world change in ways my daddy never could have imagined. Born in 1951 in Atlanta, raised by a single mother who worked 3 jobs to keep food on our table and shoes on my feet, Mama always told me, "Tago, you treat people the way you want to be treated, and you love with your whole heart or don't love at all." Growing up, we didn't have much, but we had love. Our little shotgun house on the west side was filled with the smell of cornbread and collard greens every Sunday. The sound of Mahalia Jackson coming from Mama's old radio, and the kind of warmth that can't be bought or faked. Mama worked as a seamstress during the day, cleaned offices at night, and took in laundry on weekends. But somehow, she always had time to sit with me at the kitchen table and help with my homework. "Education is your ticket out of here," she'd say, her weathered hands pointing at the math problems I'd rather ignore. "But don't you ever forget where you come from or the people who loved you when you had nothing to offer but your smile." And I took those words to heart. Made it through high school, got a scholarship to study business at Clark Atlanta University, and by the time I was 25, I was running my own construction company. Nothing fancy, mind you, just honest work with honest pay. But I was proud of what I'd built. I had a crew of 6 good men, contracts with the city, and a reputation for showing up on time and doing the job right. The thing about growing up without a father is that you spend a lot of time thinking about what kind of man you want to be. I promised myself I'd be the kind of husband who came home every night, the kind of father who showed up to every game, every recital, every moment that mattered. I'd be present in ways my own father never was. My daddy left when I was 4, just walked out one morning and never came back. Mama never spoke ill of him, but I could see the hurt in her eyes every time somebody asked about him. That hurt shaped me, made me swear I'd never abandon anyone who counted on me, never make a child wonder if they were worth staying for. By the time I hit 40, I'd bought a nice house in Decatur, had money in the bank, and was ready to settle down. My mama had passed by then. Cancer took her when I was 38, but I could still hear her voice every time I made a big decision. "Love with your whole heart," she'd whisper in my memory, "or don't love at all." I dated some, but never found the right woman. Seemed like everyone I met was either looking for a sugar daddy or playing games I didn't understand. I wanted simple, honest love. The kind where you come home excited to see each other, where you sit on the porch and talk until the mosquitoes drive you inside. That's the man I was when I met Valerie Washington at a church social in 1994. 43 years old, successful, lonely, and ready to be somebody's everything. Valerie was 29 when we met, a single mother with a 3-year-old son named Devin. She was working as a receptionist at a doctor's office, struggling to make ends meet, but she carried herself with dignity, had this smile that could light up a room, and a laugh that made you want to keep talking just to hear it again. The first thing I noticed about her wasn't her beauty, though she was beautiful. It was how gentle she was with Devin when he got cranky at the church social. Instead of getting embarrassed or angry, she knelt down to his level and spoke to him like he was a person, not a burden. That told me everything I needed to know about her character, or so I thought. Devin was this tiny little thing with big brown eyes and a gap-toothed grin. Shy at first, hiding behind his mama's legs whenever I came around. But kids, they got a way of seeing through the nonsense straight to your heart. By our third date, he was asking me to push him on the swings at the park. "Higher, Mr. Tagaut, higher," he'd squeal, his little legs pumping air. And something in my chest would swell up watching him fly through the sky, trusting me to catch him if he fell. That's when I knew I wasn't just falling for Valerie, I was falling for her son too. This little boy who needed a daddy, and this woman who needed a partner. Valerie and I courted proper, the way folks used to do. Church on Sundays, family dinners, long talks on the porch after Devin went to bed. She told me about her struggles as a single mom, how she'd been working 2 jobs just to keep their heads above water, how Devin's biological father, a man named Trevor, had walked out when the boy was barely 2 years old. He said he wasn't ready to be a father, she told me one evening, rocking in the chair I'd bought for her birthday. Said he had dreams and a baby would hold him back. Haven't heard from him since, except for child support checks that stopped coming after 6 months. "Well," I said, reaching over to squeeze her hand, "some people just don't know what they're missing." She looked at me with tears in her eyes. "You're different, Tago. You see us as a package deal, and you're okay with that." More than okay, I was grateful. Here was my chance to be the father I'd never had, the husband my mama deserved but never got. I started spending more time at their little apartment, helping with bedtime stories and Saturday morning cartoons. Devin began warming up to me, asking me to fix his broken toys, to read him stories, to explain why the sky was blue. Simple questions that made me feel like the smartest man in the world. "Mr. Taco," he said one night after I'd read him 3 stories, "are you going to be my daddy?" My heart nearly burst. "Would you like that, buddy?" He nodded so hard I thought his head might fall off. "Mama said you're the kindest man she's ever met." We married in 1996, 2 years after we met. Devin was 5 by then, old enough to understand that this man who'd been taking him fishing and teaching him to ride a bike was about to become his daddy for real. The night before the wedding, I sat him down in his room, surrounded by the superhero posters I'd helped him hang up. "You know, tomorrow's a big day, right, buddy?" He nodded, serious as a heart attack. "Tomorrow, when I marry your mama, I'm not just getting a wife. I'm getting a son, and I want you to know that I'm going to love you and take care of you just like you were mine from the beginning. You understand that?" Those big brown eyes filled up with tears, and he threw his little arms around my neck. "I love you, Daddy," followed by a reception in the fellowship hall. Devin stood beside me as my best man, wearing a little tuxedo that matched mine. When the preacher asked if anyone had objections, Devin raised his hand and said, "I object to waiting any longer to call him Daddy." The whole place erupted in laughter and tears. That night, after all the guests had gone home and Devin was asleep in his new room in our new house, Valerie and I sat on our porch talking about the future. "You know what you've done, don't you?" she said, her head on my shoulder. Was I? "You've made us whole. Me and Devin, we were just surviving before. Now we're living." I kissed the top of her head, breathing in the smell of her hair, the scent of home. "We're family now. That's all that matters. 3 months after the wedding, I legally adopted Devin. Walked into that courthouse feeling like I was receiving the greatest gift of my life. The judge asked Devin if he understood what was happening, if he wanted me to be his father. Yes, sir, Devon said, standing tall in his little suit. He's already my daddy. This just makes it official. I had those adoption papers framed and hung them in my office. Used to look at them every day and smile, thinking about how blessed I was to have found my family. Looking back now, I can see the cracks in the foundation, but love has a way of making you blind to what you don't want to see. The first few years of our marriage were good, real good. Devin was thriving in school, calling me dad without any hesitation, and Valerie seemed happy. We had family game nights, took vacations to Disney World, and I was coaching Devin's Little League team. But there were moments, little things, that should have raised flags. Like the way Valerie would sometimes get mysterious phone calls that she'd take in the other room. When I'd ask who it was, she'd wave me off. Just work stuff. Or you know how my sister is. But I'd notice how her voice would change, become softer, more intimate when she thought I couldn't hear, or how she'd suddenly need to run errands that took hours, coming home with nothing but a single item from the store. Traffic was terrible, she'd say, but I'd driven those same roads and never hit any traffic. She'd smell different too, like unfamiliar cologne or soap, but when I'd mention it, she'd say she'd tried a new perfume sample at the mall. The first time I caught her in a real lie, Devon was about 8. She told me she was going to a work conference in Birmingham for the weekend, something about new office procedures. Made sense because she'd been talking about changes at the doctor's office. I even offered to drive her to the airport. Oh, honey, that's okay. Angela from work is picking me up. But when I called our hotel Saturday evening to wish her good night, they said they'd never heard of any medical conference and didn't have a Valerie Robert registered. I called 3 times, thinking maybe I had the wrong hotel. Each time, same answer. When she came home Sunday night, I was waiting in the kitchen with a cup of coffee and questions. How was the conference? Oh, you know how these things are. Boring presentations, terrible hotel food. I'm just glad to be home. She kissed me on the forehead and started unpacking her bag. I watched her pull out clothes that looked freshly bought, tags still on some of them. Funny thing, I said, keeping my voice level. I called the hotel to send you flowers and they said there wasn't any conference there this weekend. The look that crossed her face, it was like watching someone get caught with their hand in the cookie jar. But instead of coming clean, she doubled down. They must have been confused. Maybe they were looking at the wrong weekend. They said they'd never heard of any medical conference. I called 3 times. Her eyes filled up with tears then, and she sank into the chair across from me. Tagwe, I'm sorry. I wasn't at a work conference. My heart started racing. Here it comes, I thought. The truth. I was at my cousin Rebecca's house in Birmingham. She's going through a divorce, and she needed someone to talk to. I knew if I told you where I was really going, you'd want to come with me or send Devin with me, and she needed privacy. She's in a bad way to go away. Her husband was hitting her. It made sense. Valerie was always helping family members through their problems, and she was crying, looking so ashamed of herself for lying to me. The new clothes? Rebecca had taken her shopping to cheer her up. Baby, why didn't you just tell me that? I would have understood. I know. I didn't want to burden you with her drama. You work so hard and I wanted to handle it myself. Rebecca made me promise not to tell anyone about the abuse. I reached across the table and took her hands. We're married, Val. Your family is my family. Their problems are our problems. Don't lie to me, okay? Not about anything. She nodded, squeezing my hands. I promise. I'm so sorry, Tagwe. I love you so much. And I believed her. Lord help me, I believed her because I wanted to believe her. Because the alternative, that the woman I'd married and the mother of my adopted son was lying to my face about where she'd been, was too painful to consider. But that was just the first lie, in what would become a web of deception that would take me 19 years to fully untangle. The second time it happened, Devin was 12. Valerie started working late more often, saying the doctor's office was expanding and she needed to help train new staff. Made sense, and the extra money was nice. Devin was getting into sports, and those equipment costs were adding up. But sometimes I'd call the office around closing time to see if she needed me to pick up dinner, and whoever answered would say she'd left hours ago. When I'd mention it to Valerie, she'd look confused. That's weird. Maybe they were talking about someone else. You know how busy it gets, there are people coming and going. Or she'd get defensive. Tego, are you checking up on me? Don't you trust me? And there's the thing about being a good man, fellas. When someone you love accuses you of not trusting them, your first instinct is to prove that you do trust them. So you stop asking questions. You stop checking up. You give them the benefit of the doubt because that's what love is supposed to do. But I started noticing other things. How she'd take her phone with her everywhere, even to the bathroom. How she'd get text messages late at night and claim they were from her sister, but she'd smile at the screen in a way that didn't look like sister talk. The third time, Devin was 15, I came home early from a job site because we'd finished ahead of schedule, and I found Valerie in our bedroom whispering into her phone. When she saw me, she hung up quick. Who was that? Nobody, just Dr. Peterson calling about my appointment next week. But I'd seen the look on her face before she hung up. That wasn't the look of someone discussing a dental cleaning. That was the look of someone who'd been caught doing something they shouldn't be doing. That was the look of a woman talking to a man who wasn't her husband. This time, I didn't let it go. Wow, show me your phone. Show me your phone. If it was just Dr. Peterson, show me the call log. She clutched that phone to her chest like it was made of gold. Tagwe Robert, I cannot believe you're asking me to prove I'm not lying to you. After all these years of marriage, this is what we've come to? And then she started crying, not just regular tears, but that deep, body-shaking crying that makes you feel like the worst person in the world for making someone you love hurt like that. I work all day, come home and cook dinner, take care of this house, help Devin with his homework, and this is the thanks I get? You think I'm lying to you? You think I'm cheating on you? Val, I never said anything about cheating. I just asked who was on the phone. But that's what you thinking, isn't it? That's what all this is about. You don't trust me. You think I'm running around behind your back? By the time she was done crying and carrying on, I was the one apologizing. I was the one promising to trust her more, to stop being so suspicious, to be a better husband. I'm sorry, baby. I don't know what got into me. Of course I trust you. She wiped her eyes and kissed me. I love you, Tagore. You and Devin are my whole world. I would never do anything to hurt this family. And I believed her. Again, that's how manipulation works, brothers. They make you feel like you're crazy for noticing what you're noticing. They make you feel guilty for asking the questions you should be asking. They turn their wrongs into your faults. And before you know it, you're apologizing for their lies. But here's what I didn't know at the time. While I was apologizing for not trusting her, she was already planning how to be more careful, how to cover her tracks better, how to make me feel so guilty for questioning her that I'd stop asking questions altogether. The pattern was set. Suspicious behavior, confrontation, tears, guilt, apology, promise to do better, rinse and repeat. And each time I walked away feeling like I was the problem, like I was the one who needed to change. The pattern continued for years. Mysterious phone calls, unexplained absences, stories that didn't quite add up. And every time I questioned her, Valerie would turn it around on me. I was being paranoid. I was being controlling. I was being unreasonable. But the real betrayal, the one that would eventually destroy everything, was happening right under my nose with Devin. It started small, little comments here and there about how I wasn't his real father, how his real dad might come back someday, how some people were just temporary in other people's lives. At first, I thought it was normal. Kids say things, especially when they're mad about chores or being grounded. Devin was a teenager, and teenagers test boundaries. They push buttons. They say things to hurt you when they're hurting. But these comments were different. They were calculated, designed to remind me that I was an outsider in my own family. "You can't tell me what to do," Devin said one day when I asked him to clean his room. "You're not my real dad." I felt like I'd been slapped. "David, what did you just say?" "Nothing. Forget it." "No, I won't forget it. I've been your father since you were 3 years old. I adopted you. I raised you. That adoption certificate on my office wall says I'm your real father. Papers don't make you my dad. Then what does? 19 years of loving you, being there for every game, every school play, every time you were sick, teaching you to drive, helping with homework, staying up all night when you had nightmares." He shrugged. "That's what you're supposed to do." Supposed to do, like it was an obligation, not a choice made out of love. When Devon was 16, we got into an argument about his grades. He'd been slacking off in school, and I had taken away his car privileges until he brought his grades up. "You can't tell me what to do," he said, standing in our living room with his arms crossed. "You're not my real dad anyway." The words hit me like a physical blow, but I kept my voice calm. "Devin, I've been your dad since you were 3 years old. Biology doesn't change that." "Yeah, well, maybe it should." I looked at Valerie, expecting her to step in to remind Devin that I was his father in every way that mattered. Instead, she just stood there, arms folded, watching like she was enjoying the show. "Val, are you going to say something?" She shrugged. "He's not wrong, Tigo. You're not his biological father." The room went quiet. I could hear the air conditioning humming, the neighbor's dog barking, my own heart pounding in my ears. "What did you just say?" "Say he's not wrong. You adopted him, yes, but that doesn't make you his real father." "Valerie, we've been married for 20 years. I've raised that boy since he was 3 years old. I've loved him, provided for him, been there for every single important moment of his life. And we appreciate that," she said, her voice cold as winter. "But appreciation doesn't change biology." Devin was smirking now, like he'd won some kind of victory. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't a spontaneous argument. This was planned. This was coordinated. This was mother and son tag teaming the man who'd spent 2 decades loving them both. "Where is this coming from?" I asked, looking between the two of them. "What happened to us? What happened to this family?" "Nothing happened," Valerie said. "You just need to understand your place." My place. In the house I bought, in the family I'd built, with the woman I'd married and the child I'd raised. "And what exactly is my place, Valerie?" She looked me dead in the eye and said, "You're a good man, Taga. You've been good to us. But at the end of the day, you're not Devon's father and you're not my soulmate. You're the man who takes care of us. The man who takes care of them, not their husband and father. Their caretaker, their provider, their safety net." That's when I started paying closer attention to the conversations happening around me when people thought I wasn't listening. That's when I started putting together the pieces of a puzzle I'd been too trusting to see. The phone calls weren't from work. The late nights weren't about training new staff. The mysterious errands weren't errands at all. I hired a private investigator, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to know what was happening in my own marriage. Cost me $3,000, but it was worth every penny for the truth. Valerie had been seeing other men for years. Not just one affair, but multiple affairs. She had a whole other life that she was living while I was at work, while I was coaching Devin's teams, while I was being the faithful husband and devoted father. The investigator showed me photos, receipts, phone records, lunch dates that weren't with her sister, hotel rooms paid for with cash, text messages to men whose names I'd never heard. But the worst part wasn't the cheating. The worst part was how she trained Devin to see me, how she'd spent years poisoning him against me, telling him that I was temporary, that I wasn't really his father, that his real dad would come back someday. She had been in contact with Trevor, Devin's biological father, for the past 3 years, meeting him in secret, letting him back into Devin's life without telling me, building up this fantasy that someday Trevor would return and they'd be a real family again. She'd been planning my emotional destruction for years, and she used my love for her son as the weapon. The final confirmation came on that Tuesday, the day I heard Devon call me the landlord. I stood in that driveway for I don't know how long, just listening to him laugh about the man who'd raised him, the man who'd loved him, the man who'd always been there. When I walked into the house, Devin was still on the phone, sitting at the kitchen table I'd bought, eating cereal from bowls I'd paid for, talking to his friend about his weekend plans. Yeah, man, I'll ask the landlord if I can borrow some money. He always says yes. He saw me standing there and he didn't even have the decency to look ashamed, just kept talking. Hold on, he said into the phone, then looked at me. Hey, can I have $40? I want to go to the movies with Angela. The landlord, I said. He had the nerve to laugh. What? You just called me the landlord. Oh, you heard that? No apology, no embarrassment, just a shrug. I was just joking around. Joking around? About the man who raised you? About your father? Dagoy, chill out. It's not that serious. Not that serious. 19 years of my life, and it wasn't that serious. That's when Valerie walked into the kitchen, and I saw something in her face that I'd never noticed before. Satisfaction. Like this moment had been a long time coming, and she was finally ready for it. What's going on? She asked, but she already knew. Your son just called me the landlord. Well, she said, leaning against the counter, technically, you do own the house. And there it was, the final nail in the coffin of everything I'd believed about my family, my marriage, my life. I stood there looking at these two people I'd loved more than my own life, and I realized they were strangers. Worse than strangers. They were enemies who'd been living in my house, eating my food, taking my money, and laughing at me behind my back. That night, after Devin went out with his friends, using the $40 I'd given him, despite everything, I sat Valerie down in our living room and asked her to tell me the truth. All of it. How long have you been planning this? Planning what? This. The whole thing. Making me feel like an outsider in my own family, making Devin see me as just some man who pays the bills. She was quiet for a long time, just sitting there on the couch we picked out together 10 years ago, looking at her hands. When she finally spoke, her voice was different, colder, like she dropped a mask she'd been wearing for decades. I never planned it to go. It just happened. What happened? When did I stop being your husband and become your caretaker? You were never my husband the way you wanted to be. The honesty of it hit me harder than if she'd slapped me. At least anger would have meant I still mattered to her. This was worse. This was indifference. What does that mean? It means I married you because you were safe, because you were stable, because you could provide for me and Devin, but I never loved you the way you loved me. 27 years of marriage, and she'd never loved me. And then why did you stay? Why didn't you just leave? And go where? Do what? You gave us a good life, Tago. A nice house, financial security, stability. Why would I give that up? Because marriage is supposed to be about love, not convenience. She laughed, actually laughed. Love doesn't pay the mortgage, Tago. Love doesn't put food on the table or pay for college tuition. What about Devin? Did you ever plan to tell him the truth about how you saw me? Devin figured it out on his own. Kids aren't stupid. He could see that I didn't look at you the way wives look at husbands they're in love with. So you let him disrespect me. You let him treat me like I was nothing. I let him see reality. You're not his father, Tago. You never were. You were just the man who was there when his real father wasn't. This real father abandoned him when he was 2 years old. And maybe someday he'll come back. There it was. The fantasy she'd been feeding Devin all these years. The hope that someday his biological father would return and I'd be pushed aside like I'd never mattered at all. You've been in contact with him, haven't you? She looked away and I knew. Valerie, have you been in contact with Devin's biological father? Sometime. How long? A few years. And Devin knows. He knows his father has been asking about him, that he wants to be part of his life again. My heart felt like it was being squeezed in a vise. All those years of bedtime stories, little league games, homework help, driving lessons, father-son talks about becoming a man, and she'd been telling him that his real father might come back someday. What else, Val? What else have you been hiding from me? That's when she told me about the affairs. Not just one, but many. She'd been seeing other men for most of our marriage. Different men at different times, but always someone. Why? I asked. If you needed something I wasn't giving you, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you give me a chance to be better? Because you were already giving me what I needed from you. Stability, security, a nice home. I got everything else from other people. Everything else? Like what? Passion, excitement, romance. The things you can't fake. I romanced you, Valerie. I brought you flowers, took you on dates, told you I loved you every day. You went through the motions, but you can't make someone feel butterflies, Taga. You can't manufacture chemistry. So our entire marriage was a lie. No, it wasn't a lie. It was an arrangement that worked for both of us. I got security. You got a family. We both got what we needed. I needed love, Valerie. I needed a wife who loved me back. And I gave you what I could give you. But what she could give wasn't love. It was performance. It was pretending. It was using my devotion to build a comfortable life while keeping her heart locked away for other people. She told me about Michael, a physical therapist she'd been seeing for 2 years. About James, a divorced father she'd met at Devon's soccer games. About countless others who'd gotten the passion and attention I'd been begging for. Every time you caught me in a lie, I had to get smart about it, she said, like she was discussing a business strategy. The tears worked because you're a good man who doesn't want to hurt people. The guilt trips worked because you love me and don't want to be the kind of husband who doesn't trust his wife. She turned my love into a weapon against me. Every time I'd tried to protect our marriage, I'd been protecting her affairs. The conversations that followed over the next few weeks were brutal. Devon stopped even pretending to respect me. He'd come and go as he pleased, take money from my wallet without asking, bring friends over who looked at me like I was the help. When I tried to discipline him, Valerie would intervene. He's 18 to go. He's practically an adult. You can't control him anymore. I'm not trying to control him. I'm trying to teach him respect. Respect is earned, Devon said from the doorway, and you haven't earned mine. I've earned your respect every day for the past 19 years. You've earned my gratitude, maybe, but not my respect. The difference between gratitude and respect. Gratitude is what you feel for someone who does things for you. Respect is what you feel for someone you look up to. In Devon's eyes, I was a service provider, not a father figure. I started sleeping in the guest room. Couldn't stand lying next to Valerie, knowing that she'd been lying next to me for 27 years without ever meaning any of it. Couldn't stand hearing her breathe. Couldn't stand the way she reached for me in her sleep like everything was normal. My friends started noticing changes in me. I was quieter, more withdrawn. When they'd ask what was wrong, I'd make excuses. How do you tell people that your entire life has been a performance that you didn't know you were watching? Carlos, my foreman, pulled me aside one day at a job site. Boss, you okay? You've been different lately. I'm fine, Carlos. Nah, you're not fine. You're moving like a man who's carrying too much weight. What's going on at home? I looked at this man who'd worked for me for 15 years, who'd been to my house for barbecues, who'd watched Devon grow up, and I almost told him everything. Almost let it all spill out right there in the middle of a construction site. Instead, I just said, sometimes you find out that the life you thought you were living wasn't the life you were actually living. He nodded like he understood. Maybe he did. Maybe every man understands what it feels like to discover that love isn't always a two-way street. The fight for justice, closure, or peace. I hired a lawyer, not to be vindictive, but to protect myself. 27 years of marriage means 27 years of shared assets, shared debts, shared everything. I needed to understand what a divorce would look like, especially since I'd legally adopted Devon and had been supporting him financially. The lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Patricia Henderson, looked at my case with the kind of clear-eyed assessment that only comes from seeing the same story play out hundreds of times. Mr. Robert, I'm going to be straight with you. This is going to be expensive, both financially and emotionally. Your wife has been planning this for a long time, whether she admits it or not. She's got you in a position where you're going to lose a lot no matter what you do. Oh, yeah. You adopted Devin, so you're legally responsible for him until he's 21 or finishes college, whichever comes first. You own the house, but she's been living there for 27 years, so she's got rights to it. And if she's been having affairs, that might affect the settlement, but only if we can prove it, and only if the judge cares. What are my options? You can fight for everything and spend the next 2 years in court spending money you'll never get back, or you can try to negotiate a settlement that gets you out of this marriage with some dignity and some of your assets intact. What would you do if this was your life? She leaned back in her chair and studied me for a moment. Mr. Robert, can I ask you something personal? Go ahead. Why did you stay so long? The signs were there. The disrespect, the lies, the way they treated you. Why didn't you leave years ago? I thought about it for a long time before answering, because I believed that love was supposed to be unconditional. I believed that family was everything. I believed that if I just loved them enough, eventually they'd love me back the same way. And now I realize that unconditional love only works if both people understand what love actually means. The evidence from the private investigator helped. Photos of Valerie entering hotel rooms with other men, credit card receipts showing dinners for two when she claimed to be working late, phone records revealing hundreds of calls to numbers I didn't recognize. But what hurt most was discovering how long this had been going on. The investigator traced some of the affairs back 8 years. 8 years of living with a woman who was getting her emotional and physical needs met by other men, while I went to bed every night thinking I was the luckiest man alive. We filed for divorce 4 months after that conversation in the kitchen. Valerie wasn't surprised. If anything, she seemed relieved, like she'd been waiting for me to finally give up. I was wondering when you grow a backbone, she said when I served her the papers. The hardest part was watching Devon's reaction. Not sadness or disappointment, but anger. He was angry at me for abandoning them, angry at me for breaking up the family, angry at me for not just accepting my role as the provider and staying in my lane. You're being selfish, he told me one night when I came by to pick up some of my things. Mom needs you. I need you. We're a family. Devin, I've been trying to be your family for 19 years, but family is supposed to be a two-way street. What's that supposed to mean? It means family members love each other, they respect each other, they don't lie to each other or use each other. We never used you. Son, you just called me the landlord last week. It was a joke. No, it wasn't. It was the truth. And maybe that's the problem. Maybe I should have accepted the truth a long time ago instead of trying to make it into something it wasn't. He stood there in the doorway of the house I'd bought, looking at me like I was the villain in his story. And maybe, in his version of events, I was. Maybe I was the man who gotten in the way of his fantasy of his real father coming back. Maybe I was the obstacle to his mother's happiness. Maybe I was the problem that needed to be removed. But I wasn't going to apologize for loving them. I wasn't going to apologize for trying to build a family. I wasn't going to apologize for believing that marriage meant something more than a financial arrangement. The divorce proceedings were brutal. Valerie fought for everything, claiming she deserved half of what I'd built because she'd been supporting me emotionally for 27 years. She hired an expensive lawyer who painted me as a controlling husband who'd isolated her from her friends and family. None of it was true, but truth doesn't always matter in divorce court. I had to sell the house where I'd taught Devin to ride a bike, where we'd had Christmas mornings and birthday parties, where I thought we were building a lifetime of memories. Valerie got half the proceeds plus alimony for 5 years. I had to liquidate half my retirement savings, money I'd been putting away for our golden years together, for trips we planned to take when Devin was grown, Money that was now going to support a woman who never loved me and a son who saw me as nothing more than an 18. Steven's college tuition and living expenses until he graduated. 4 more years of supporting a young man who made it clear he didn't consider me his father. But the adoption papers were legal, and the law is the law. The divorce took 8 months to finalize. 8 months of lawyers and mediators and financial disclosures. 8 months of having my life picked apart and divided up like I was already dead. The day I moved out of the house I'd called home for 27 years, Devin helped me load boxes into my truck. Not out of kindness, but because Valerie had asked him to. He was efficient, businesslike, like he was helping a stranger move. "Where are you gonna live?" he asked as we loaded the last box. "I found a little place in Lithonia, nothing fancy, but it's mine. You gonna be okay?" For a moment, he sounded like the little boy who used to worry about me when I had a cold. The little boy who'd bring me drawings from school and ask if I was proud of him. "I'll be fine, son. I've been taking care of myself for a long time." "Yeah, but you've never lived alone." "No, I haven't, but I'm looking forward to it." And I was looking forward to not having to wonder if the person I was talking to was telling me the truth. Looking forward to not having to earn love that would never come. Looking forward to finding out who To-Go Robert was when he wasn't trying to be somebody's everything. "The boy," Devon said as I climbed into the driver's seat. "Yeah, I hope you find what you're looking for." It was the kindest thing he'd said to me in years, maybe the most honest thing either of us had said to each other in a long time. That was 4 years ago. I'm 73 now, living in a 2-bedroom apartment that overlooks a small lake. It's quiet here, peaceful. I wake up every morning knowing exactly where I stand with everyone in my life, and that's a feeling I'd forgotten I was capable of having. The first year was hard, harder than I expected. You spend almost 3 decades building your identity around being a husband and father, and when that gets taken away, you don't know who you are anymore. I'd come home from work to an empty apartment and not know what to do with myself. For months, I'd catch myself buying groceries for 3 people instead of 1. I'd see something funny on TV and turn to share it with someone who wasn't there. I'd wake up on Saturday mornings and for a split second forget that I didn't have a Little League game to coach or a family breakfast to make. The silence was the hardest part. After 27 years of constant noise, constant demands, constant conversation, the quiet felt overwhelming. I'd find myself talking to the television just to hear a voice in the apartment. But slowly, I started remembering who I was before I became what other people needed me to be. I started reading again, something I'd loved as a young man but had given up when family life got busy. Started with mysteries, then moved on to biographies of men who'd rebuilt their lives after losing everything. I started fishing, taking my boat out on Lake Lanier every weekend, just me, in the water and the sky, no schedules to keep or people to please. There's something healing about sitting in a boat with your line in the water, watching the sun come up over the mountains. I started going to a men's group at my new church, listening to other men tell stories that sounded a lot like mine. Turned out I wasn't the only man who'd been fooled by a woman who saw marriage as a business arrangement. Wasn't the only father who'd poured his heart into raising a child who'd been taught not to value that love. That's where I met Brother Williams, an 80-year-old man who had been divorced twice and had learned some hard lessons about love and respect. "Son," he told me one evening after group, "the mistake we make is thinking that love is about sacrifice. We think if we just give up enough of ourselves, eventually we'll earn the love we want. But real love doesn't ask you to disappear. Real love sees you and chooses you anyway. So what do you do when you realize you've been invisible for decades? You start becoming visible to yourself. You start treating yourself the way you wanted them to treat you. You start being the man you were before you started trying to earn love that was never available." Brother Williams introduced me to other men who'd been through similar experiences. There was Jerome, a 65-year-old teacher whose wife had left him for her personal trainer after 30 years of marriage. There was Samuel, a 58-year-old mechanic whose teenage daughter had chosen to live with her mother's boyfriend instead of him. These weren't broken men. They were men who'd been broken but had chosen to rebuild themselves into something stronger. I started going to therapy. At 70 years old, sitting in a counselor's office talking about my feelings like a teenager, but it helped. Dr. Martinez helped me understand that I'd been what she called trauma bonded to Valerie, that I'd confused intensity with intimacy, conflict with passion. Mr. Robert, she said during one of our sessions, you were addicted to trying to fix something that was designed to stay broken. Valerie needed you to keep trying so she could keep rejecting you. Devon needed you to keep reaching so he could keep pulling away. Your pain was serving their purpose. What purpose? It made them feel powerful. It made them feel wanted without having to give anything back. You were providing them with unconditional love while they gave you conditional crumbs. That hit me like a brick. All those years, I thought I was being noble by loving people who didn't love me back. Turns out I was just enabling their selfishness. Dr. Martinez helped me understand something else too. Valerie wasn't just a cheater. She was what they call a serial cheater, someone who gets a thrill from the deception itself. It wasn't about the other men. It was about having a secret life, about feeling like she was getting away with something. When you caught her the first time, why do you think she cried and promised to do better? Because she felt guilty? No, because she realized she needed to be more careful. The tears weren't guilt, Mr. Robert. They were frustration that her system had been disrupted. And every time I caught her after that, she'd gotten better at turning it around on me, making me feel guilty for not trusting her, making me feel like I was the problem for asking questions she didn't want to answer. She trained you to stop looking, Dr. Martinez explained. Every time you got suspicious, she punished you for it. Eventually, you learned that it was easier to pretend everything was fine than to deal with her anger. That's the thing about manipulation, brothers. It's not just about the lies they tell you. It's about training you to stop asking for the truth. The therapy helped me understand that Devon's behavior wasn't entirely his fault either. He'd been manipulated just like I had, but in a different way. Valerie had spent years undermining my authority, teaching him that biological connection mattered more than emotional bonds, filling his head with fantasies about his absent father. She parentified him, Dr. Martinez explained, made him feel responsible for her emotional well-being, taught him that loving you meant betraying her. No child should have to choose between parents, but she forced him to make that choice over and over again. I started to understand that Devon's cruelty toward me wasn't just teenage rebellion. It was a survival mechanism. In a house where his mother controlled the emotional climate, he'd learned that the safest position was to be on her side, even if it meant rejecting the man who'd actually been there for him. That didn't excuse his behavior, but it helped me understand it. And understanding helped me let go of some of the anger I'd been carrying. 6 months into therapy, Dr. Martinez suggested I try writing letters to Devon and Valerie, not to send them, but to help me process my feelings. Write them everything you wish you could say, all the hurt, all the anger, all the love you still feel. Get it out of your system and onto paper. I wrote dozens of letters to the 3-year-old Devon, who'd called me daddy for the first time, letters to the woman Valerie had pretended to be in those early years, letters to my younger self, warning him about what was coming. Some nights I'd write until my hand cramped, pouring out decades of suppressed emotions. Other nights I'd write just a few lines before the grief overwhelmed me. But slowly, the writing helped me separate the good memories from the pain. I could remember teaching Devon to throw a curveball without feeling like a fool for caring. I could remember the early years with Valerie without completely dismissing them as lies. I started volunteering at a literacy program for adults, teaching people how to read. It was amazing how much respect you get from someone when you're helping them learn something that will change their life. These students looked at me with gratitude, but more than that, they looked at me with respect. Mr. Tagawi, one of my students, a 45-year-old man named Jerome who'd never learned to read properly, said to me after his first successful attempt at reading a full paragraph, "You don't know what this means to me." "Tell me," I said. It means I'm not stupid. It means I can help my daughter with her homework. It means I can read the Bible for myself instead of having to take someone else's word for what it says. That conversation meant more to me than 27 years of I love you from people who didn't mean it. Last month, Jerome sent me a text message. The first text message he'd ever written himself. It just said, "Thank you for believing in me, Mr. Tago." That text message sits framed on my nightstand. It reminds me every morning that love doesn't have to be complicated. Sometimes it's just one person believing in another person's potential and being willing to invest time in helping them reach it. I'm dating someone now. Her name is Patricia, and she's a 68-year-old retired teacher who lost her husband to cancer 5 years ago. We met at the library where I volunteer, and we've been taking things slow, getting to know each other as friends first. The difference is night and day. When Patricia looks at me, I can see that she sees me, not what I can do for her, not what I can provide, but who I am as a person. When she laughs at my jokes, it's because they're actually funny, not because she's pretending to be amused. When she tells me she's proud of something I've accomplished, I can hear the sincerity in her voice. "You know what I like about you, Tagoe?" she said to me last week as we sat by the lake watching the sunset. "Was that you're not trying to be anything other than who you are. You're not performing for me. You're just being yourself." Being myself. It sounds so simple, but it took me 70 years to figure out what that meant. Patricia knows about my past. I told her everything on our 5th date, figuring she had a right to know what she was getting into. Instead of running away, she thanked me for my honesty. "I'm sorry you went through that," she said, "but I'm grateful it led you to become the man you are now." The man I am now. Not the man I used to be when I was trying to earn love that was never available. Not the man I thought I had to be to keep my family together. Just me, at 73, finally comfortable in my own skin. Devin hasn't spoken to me since I moved out. I sent him a birthday card and a Christmas card the first year, but got no response. Part of me wants to keep trying, but Dr. Martinez helped me understand that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is let them live with the consequences of their choices. You can't love someone into loving you back, she told me. And you can't respect someone into respecting you. Those are gifts they have to choose to give. I still think about him sometimes. Wonder if he ever looks back on those 19 years and remembers any of the good times. The fishing trips, the baseball games, the late night talks about girls in college, and what kind of man he wanted to become. But then I remember that Tuesday morning when he called me the landlord, and I realized that maybe those memories mean more to me than they ever meant to him. I've made peace with that, not because I stopped loving him, but because I finally learned to love myself enough to stop begging for scraps of affection from people who never intended to give me a full meal. 6 months ago, I ran into Valerie at the grocery store. She looked older, tired. Her hair was gray at the roots, and she'd gained weight. She seemed surprised to see me, almost nervous. I said, "Go, how are you?" "I'm well, Val. How's Devin?" "He's good. Graduated college last month. Got a job with a marketing firm in Buckhead." I felt a stab of pride, followed immediately by sadness. I'd paid for that college education, but I hadn't been invited to the graduation. Hadn't even known it was happening. "That's good. I'm proud of him." She nodded, shifting uncomfortably. "He asks about you sometimes." "Does he?" "Yeah, I think he misses you, but he's too stubborn to admit it." "Well, you know where I live if he ever wants to talk." We stood there for a moment in the cereal aisle, two people who'd shared almost 3 decades of life together, not knowing what else to say. "Yeah, I'm sorry for how things ended, for how we treated you. You deserved better." It was the first genuine thing she'd said to me in years. Maybe the first genuine thing she'd ever said to me. "Thank you for saying that, Val. Are you happy?" I thought about it for a moment. "Yeah, I am." "Are you?" She shrugged. "I'm getting by." Getting by. That's what I've been doing for 27 years. Getting by, surviving, making do. Now I was living. That's a difference. After she left, I stood there in that grocery store aisle thinking about how far I'd come. 4 years ago, running into her would have ruined my week, would have sent me spiraling into depression and regret. Now, it was just a conversation with someone from my past. And I wasn't angry anymore, wasn't bitter, wasn't hoping for revenge or apologies. I was just grateful that chapter of my life was over and I was finally writing a new one. If you hear nothing else from me, remember this. Love is not supposed to hurt all the time. Respect is not supposed to be something you have to beg for. Family is not supposed to make you feel like an outsider in your own life. And if you find yourself in a situation where you're giving everything and getting nothing back, where you're constantly trying to prove your worth to people who should already know it, where you're being made to feel grateful for scraps of affection from people who should be grateful for your presence in their lives, then it's time to ask yourself a hard question. Are you living your life or are you just surviving somebody else's? I spent 27 years surviving Valerie's life, trying to be good enough for her love, trying to earn Devon's respect. And all I got for it was a broken heart and a late start on my real life. But here's the thing about late starts. They're still starts. At 73, I'm finally living the life I should have been living all along. I'm finally the man I was meant to be before I started trying to be what other people needed me to be. And let me tell you something, brothers. That man is pretty amazing. Not because of what he can do for other people, but because of who he is when nobody's watching. Not because of how much love he can give, but because of how much love he finally learned to give himself. The construction business is doing better than ever. Turns out, when you're not distracted by family drama, you can focus on what you do best. I've hired 3 new guys and taken on contracts I never would have had time for when I was rushing home to cook dinner for people who saw me as the help. My crew respects me in a way my own family never did. When I give instructions, they listen. When I share knowledge, they're grateful. When I tell them they did good work, they beam with pride. It's the kind of relationship I thought I had at home, but never really did. I bought myself a new truck last year. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. Paid for with money I earned, not money that was being split with someone who saw our marriage as a business partnership. Every time I get behind the wheel, I remember what it feels like to own something that nobody can take away from me. I've learned to cook for one. Sounds simple, but when you've been cooking for a family for 30 years, cooking for yourself feels strange at first. But now I enjoy it. I can make what I want, when I want it, without having to consider anyone else's preferences. I make my coffee strong. I watch the news programs I want to watch. I play my music as loud as I want. I go to bed when I'm tired and wake up when I'm rested. Simple pleasures that I'd forgotten existed. Most importantly, I've learned that being alone is not the same as being lonely. Loneliness is what I felt for 27 years, surrounded by people who didn't really see me. Solitude is what I have now, and it's a gift. These days, I spend my Sunday mornings on my little balcony overlooking the lake, drinking coffee and reading the paper. Sometimes I think about that 3-year-old boy who used to run to me with scraped knees and big dreams. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd been stronger, if I'd demanded the respect I deserved from the beginning. But mostly I think about the future, about the man I'm becoming at 73, about the adventures I still want to have, about the love I still want to give to people who actually want to receive it. Last Sunday, I was sitting out there when my phone rang. Unknown number, local area code. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mr. Tagore. It was a young voice, male, nervous. Yes, this is Devon. My heart stopped. 4 years of silence, and suddenly there he was on the other end of the line. Hello, son. I wanted to call you to tell you something. I waited, not trusting my voice. I started therapy a few months ago, and I've been talking about my childhood, about you, about everything that happened, and I realized I realized I was wrong about a lot of things. I closed my eyes, feeling tears I didn't know were coming. I want to see you. If that's okay, I want to talk to you. Really talk to you. Of course it's okay. You're always welcome in my life, Devin. Could I come over today? I'll put on a pot of coffee. He came over that afternoon and we talked for 4 hours. He apologized for the way he treated me, for the things he'd said, for not seeing what I'd given him until it was gone. He told me about therapy, about realizing that his mother had poisoned him against me, about understanding that he'd lost the only real father he'd ever had because he'd been chasing the fantasy of a man who never cared enough to stay. I don't know if you can forgive me, he said as he was leaving, but I want to try to earn your respect back if you'll let me. Devin, I said, putting my hand on his shoulder, you never lost my love, and respect isn't something you earn from family. It's something you give because you choose to. I'm proud of the man you're becoming, and I'm glad you called. We've been talking every week since then. It's different now. Better. He's treating me like a father instead of a service provider, and I'm treating him like a son instead of a project. We're building something new, something real, something based on truth instead of obligation. Doesn't erase the 20 years of pain, but it gives me hope that people can change, that love can heal, that sometimes the best endings are really just new beginnings. A month ago, Devin brought his girlfriend to meet me. Her name is Sarah, and she's a sweet girl who works as a nurse. As we sat on my balcony talking and laughing, I watched the way she looked at Devin, the way he looked at her, and I recognized something I'd never seen in my own marriage: mutual respect. She makes me want to be better, Devin told me after she went inside to help with dinner. I never understood that before. Never understood how love is supposed to make you want to grow instead of just staying comfortable. Your mother and I say carefully, we had different ideas about what love meant. I know. I'm sorry it took me so long to understand that. You were the one who really loved us. She used us, both of us. It was the first time he'd ever acknowledged what our family dynamic had really been. Not a fairy tale, but a business arrangement where love was currency and I was the only one paying. 2 weeks ago, Devon asked if I'd like to go fishing with him, just the two of us, like we used to do when he was little. We spent the day on Lake Lanier, talking about his job, his relationship, his plans for the future. But mostly, we just enjoyed each other's company. I missed this, he said as we packed up our gear at sunset. I missed it too, son. Can we do this again next weekend? I'd like that. As we drove home, I realized something had shifted. The desperate need I used to feel to be everything to everyone was gone. I wasn't trying to be the perfect father or prove my worth. I was just being myself, and that was enough. If this story hit home, share your own experience in the comments. Drop a line about a time when you had to choose between your dignity and someone else's comfort. Don't forget to subscribe and tell a brother who needs to hear he's not alone. This is his stories where men rise above together. And remember, fellas, it's never too late to start living your real life. It's never too late to demand the love and respect you deserve. It's never too late to stop being grateful for crumbs and start expecting the full meal. Your worth is not determined by how much other people appreciate you. Your value is not measured by how much you can give or how little you need in return. You are not a supporting character in someone else's story. You are the hero of your own life. Start acting like it. 73. I wake up every morning grateful for the lessons I learned the hard way. Grateful for the peace I found in solitude. Grateful for the strength I discovered when I stopped trying to earn love from people who weren't capable of giving it. I'm grateful for Patricia, who sees me as I am and chooses to love what she sees. I'm grateful for Davon, who found his way back to the truth after years of being lost in someone else's lies. I'm grateful for the students I teach, who remind me every day that it's possible to learn new things no matter how old you get. Most of all, I'm grateful for the man I became when I stopped trying to be what everyone else needed and started being who I was meant to be all along. That Tuesday morning when I heard myself called the landlord was the worst day of my life, but it was also the beginning of the best years of my life. Sometimes you have to lose everything you thought you wanted to find everything you actually need. Sometimes the greatest gift someone can give you is showing you exactly who they are, and sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is finally believing them.